Mr. President, Deputy President, ministers, deputy ministers. In fact, I sometimes think Honorable Greyling lives in another country. And I'll tell you why. Honorable Greyling and the DA fights for privatization of Eskom continuously. Eskom, my dear honorable members, is the one utility that has been able to increase the number of people who have access to electricity by almost 11 million more households. In 20 years, we have been able to increase the number of electricity users in this country. Before 1984, for 100 years, 5.2 million households, largely the white minority, had access to electricity. And we couldn't have that with a privatized Eskom. We couldn't have that with a privatized Eskom. But let me also say, and many households, many very poor people have access to electricity today because we have free basic services. In fact, let me also say to the Honourable Member Banga, who says that the DA stands for farm workers owning farms. They have a kind of shareholding scheme in the Western Cape with farm workers, where farm workers can't even see the books. Even they are part shareholders in it. So it's spin and spin and spin, and it means nothing. I rise, Mr. President, to reinforce and expand upon what you've said in your State of the Nation address in relation to energy in general and the electricity supply challenge specifically, and to speak generally in favor of your address. Let me begin from what will seem like a highly unlikely starting point. Recently, I received an unsolicited email from Mr. Cami Fernandez, a retailer from Gordons Bay. Did your mommies not teach you not to speak when others speak? I received an unsolicited email from Mr. Cami Fernandez, a retailer from Gordons Bay. Mr. Cami Fernandez said, "It is sad that we are in a predicament with regards to Eskom. It is difficult to resolve immediately. Therefore, I offer an idea to reduce consumption without cost or inconvenience." His idea is based on the soft drink and beer drinking habits of South Africans. He proposes that we get rid of walk-in fridges in bottle stores, which for those who are unfamiliar with the inside of liquor outlets are used to store mainly beer and soft drinks. On average, these are about 50 cubic meters in size and guzzle electricity. He continued, "It hurts my heart that we have to keep walk-in coolers to keep both cold drinks and beers cold, which are almost never consumed immediately. If we get rid of these fridges," he say, "we could reduce load shedding." I must tell you, Speaker, I initially laughed. However, when I thought about it, I began to appreciate his letter for a number of reasons. First, for the spirit of volunteerism. He wrote to me without thought of personal gain. Secondly, the spirit of 2010. His mindset was about overcoming huge challenges and not bemoaning his fate, like that side of the House does. Woe is me, we're having a bad time, that side of the House. Thirdly, he identified a significant part of the solution, changing our behavior and habits in relation to the use of electricity. He says that many South Africans expect soft drinks and beer to be chilled when they buy it, even when they are not likely to consume it soon. His solution changed the behavior and expectations of consumers and reduced demand for electricity. But don't worry, I will return to Mr. Fernandez later. Speaker, the government has made bold commitments to the country to reduce poverty, unemployment, and inequality. And so, in the face of this challenge, the Cabinet and our top officials have worked tirelessly recently to defend the gains we have made on these fronts. In fact, Mr. President, the Honourable Maimane himself said here today that South Africa is better today than it was 20 years ago. A huge credit to the ANC government. And we should thank him, coming from the opposition benches, for that acknowledgement. For example, in the current year alone, Eskom has added about 100,000 new households to the grid, in addition to the connections affected by municipalities, with many more to come before the year ends. The electricity supply challenge we face, when reduced to its simplest form, is that the demand for electricity is higher than the available supply, sometimes and on some days. As a result, Eskom reduces every consumer's supply as equitably as possible for a part of the day through load shedding. What we need to do to get things back to the way they were until mid-October last year is to increase supply and reduce demand to the point at which we always have more available electricity than the highest level of demand during any year. Now, I'd like to look at supply first. The main problem is not that we do not have enough generating capacity. As I've said in this House before, when all our power stations are up and running at the same time, we have much more electricity than the very highest level of demand in any year. To put that into numbers, we have about 15% more than we need now. Technically, that is referred to as the reserve margin, and globally, 15% is to be considered to be an acceptable level. The reason that one needs this additional generating capacity is to ensure that you have enough supply for two types of eventualities. I think your toys were taken away a long time ago. First, when you switch off some of the units in power plants so that you can maintain them and replace certain parts. Second, when a component of a power plant breaks down, like when a coal silo collapses at Majuba Power Station. While one can plan, the highest you'd ever be is a whip, so be quiet. When one can plan the maintenance work in all utilities all over the world, units in power stations break down unexpectedly for a range of reasons. The main problem we are experiencing in the short term is that too much of the reserve margin is being used up to make good the losses of supply resulting from breakdowns, while we still have to use part of it to take our generating units within power stations for necessary planned maintenance. Over the past 6 years, the generating fleet has been run hard to meet demand while waiting for the new capacity to come online. What that means is that the scheduled preventative maintenance has been delayed. I now know what they call the yappy class. There have been two main consequences. All they do is yap at my ankles, and I just hear the little peep sounds coming from the side. Over the past 6 years, the generating fleet has been run very hard to meet demand while waiting for new capacity to come online. What that means is that the scheduled preventative maintenance has been delayed. Now, there have been two main consequences. First, the good part. The lights have remained on, and you have not noticed it. The bad part in the 6 years have been wear and tear on the equipment at power stations. And this has increased to the point where we are experiencing an unacceptably high number of breakdowns. This practice has now been stopped. Eskom is now following its preventative maintenance for periods of time, even if it results in load shedding. In this way, over time, you didn't speak today. Oh, that's why you're speaking. I almost forgot my shadow.
Speaker, I beg your pardon, Deputy Speaker.
In this way, over time,
Honourable Minister,
even if it results in load shedding.
Honourable Minister,
in this way,
please take your seat a little bit. What are you raising on, Honourable Member?
We would like to know if Mommy would take a question about Medupe.
I'm sure Daddy can use his time adequately somewhere else.
Proceed, Honourable Member. Order, Honourable Members, allow the Minister to complete his speech.
In pursuing this course, they have my full support and the support of important voices in the business sector. This is the hard, short-term choice that we have had to make in order to put load shedding behind us in the medium to long term. Speaker, it is imperative now that government, Eskom, and our social partners pursue all other viable means of increasing supply. To this end, Cabinet has established a war room of ministers led by the Deputy President, and in this regard, there is some good news. First, Eskom has carried out emergency repairs at the Majuba power station. Majuba is now able to provide full power at the morning and evening peaks, and an average of 85% power during the day. Permanent repairs are underway to enable Majuba to provide full power during the day as well. Secondly, a procurement process is underway to replace the boiler at Eskom's Duva power station, which failed last year. And last year it failed, and it had many insurance issues with international insurance companies. Thirdly, Eskom is expediting Yapi. Eskom is expediting its program of building Medupi, Kusile, and Ngula power stations, which are scheduled to add an additional 10,000 megawatts to the grid between June 2015 and May 2020. So, Speaker, I am very pleased to announce...
Honourable Minister, please take a seat. Honourable Member, what are you raising on?
Is the Minister of Load Shedding prepared to take a question?
When she arrives in the room. Speaker, I'm very pleased to announce that the Medupi Unit 6 turbine commissioning I want to tell you this. When Medupi Unit 6 turbine commissioning has reached a critical milestone, it is now running at the optimum speed of 3,000 revolutions per minute. And I really think you should say well done to Eskom. Fourthly, government and Eskom are committed to working with the private sector and municipal power producers to add further supply to the grid. In support of this, government is fast-tracking regulatory processes to enable the current cogen contracts between Eskom and private sector power producers. And the first ones need to be renewed, and the next we'll have to bring additional cogen on. This will augment the grid as well. By April 2015, this will add 1,000 megawatts. Fifth, the government is currently running a process of procuring additional longer-term cogeneration from private sector independent power producers. There has been an incredibly good response to the request for expressions of interest. And it is envisaged that this will add 800 megawatts more to the grid over the next 18 months. Sixth, the government is expediting the process of bringing more renewable energy IPPs onto the grid through its third and fourth renewable energy procurement windows and by accelerating the completion of the construction of approved renewable energy projects. An additional 1,100 megawatts will be brought onto the grid from the fourth renewable energy procurement window. The Department of Energy has issued a request for proposals to IPPs for a new 2,400 megawatt coal-fired power station. And of course, we're in the pre-procurement stage of a process of procuring 9,600 megawatt of nuclear power. Finally, and the DA doesn't like to know that we're doing something, they really want to know we do nothing. The government is also working with Eskom, Transnet and PetroSA on a number of initiatives to increase electricity supply from gas-fired power stations and from hydroelectricity. Deputy Speaker, all of these supply-related initiatives should see us emerge from our current electricity supply challenge over the medium term. Speaker, let me now turn to the matter of the demand for electricity and in particular to ways of reducing it. An expression of interest process is underway to identify a range of demand management initiatives, including solar water heating and the replacement of light bulbs and geysers. Government is also in discussion with business and labour regarding the feasibility of other innovative proposals for reducing demand at peak periods, such as making changes to shift times. And it will be remiss of me if I do not applaud our biggest business consumers and their workers for the magnificent way in which they have responded to Eskom and government's appeals to reduce demand, sometimes at short notice and at critical times. Eskom and municipalities are working closely to improve the management of load shedding. This includes better isolation of critical facilities, such as hospitals, better traffic management, improving communication, and creating greater predictability. Remember, the only province where jobs were lost was in the Western Cape. However, Speaker, a significant part of the solution is in the hands of citizens who consume electricity in their homes and their businesses. Mr. Fernandez had seen that many of us use electricity wastefully and unnecessarily without really thinking about it. Why is the DA so angry? You didn't win the election. You don't run the country. You got less than 30% that you thought you were going to get. When you run the country, don't point your finger at me.
Sorry, Minister, will you take a question?
His idea on its own.
Who gave you permission to speak?
Time.
Take your seat, Honourable Member.
Deputy Speaker, will the Minister take a question?
At the end of my speech, his idea on its own No, I'm just appalled at how rude you are, that's all. His idea on his own, if implemented, is unlikely to halt the need for load shedding. If we all follow Mr. Fernandez's example collectively, we will reduce demand to a level which may well reduce the need for load shedding. Demand reduction has been one of the most effective tools employed by consumers in countries that are experiencing similar challenges. This means that we must all consciously do all the things that we have been asked to do, like installing energy-efficient light bulbs in houses and offices, switching off our geysers when we go away, especially those of you who live in mansions, turning off the lights in our houses at night, not using your air conditioners, using gas rather than electricity for cooking and heating. And of course, now that we have a joint sitting, to every single municipality, switch off your street lights during the day. I always see street lights, whether I'm in Gauteng or the Western Cape, street lights burn during the day. It's not necessary. So as Mr. Fernandes concluded his email by capturing the essence of my message, he wrote, and I quote, "It is a small price to pay for everybody to benefit." I focus mainly on generation, Deputy Speaker. However, I do want to turn briefly to a very worrying trend on the distribution front.
Make it briefly, Honourable Minister, because, yes, your time is limited.
Speaker, once again, I know these SONA debates are adversarial, but I believe that one issue on which we should all be pulling together in the best interests of all of those whom we represent, and that is energy. I urge all citizens to follow the lead taken by Cami Fernandes. Thank you.